Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew: Keith Johnson,
Nanu,
Alan Seiler,
Holy Christmas,
and Veronica Dashel.
Hi.
And today we're going to be talking about the day the Earth stood still. But before we get into that, Keith, do we have any This Week in Trek this week?
We do. Just a couple of quick things. Let's jump into this. 10th of May, 1966. We're looking at advanced civilizations, people's concept of morality and justice. And Star Trek did a lot of these examinations of the human condition. One of the ones I thought they did was very interesting was the concept of entertainment, relaxation, and as they said in the episode, play. And of course, I'm talking about the original series episode, Shore Leave. The treatment was delivered on May 10th, 1966. And what I found very interesting about the episode is when, I forget if they called him the keeper or not, but the guy who came out, who ran the Shore Leave planet, came out and he said they came here to play. And I always loved it how Sulu is stunned. He's like, play? Creatures as advanced as you are, and you still play. And I just love the concept because if you remember, especially when I was growing up, every concept of a futuristic society was people with real big heads like the Telosians who didn't have fun. And I love that Star Trek believed in humanizing what we are going to become. We're still humans no matter how much technology we gain.
Right.
1 year later, 10th of May, this tops almost everybody's list of the best original series episode. Not mine necessarily, but it's so many people's top. The first draft of the Doomsday Machine was presented. Absolute banger of an episode. I've read a billion polls over the years, and anytime anyone is asked about an original series episode they want to revisit or what should have been turned into a movie, this is always at the top, the Doomsday Machine. I love it. I wouldn't put it at my absolute top, but it's an absolutely exciting episode.
Yeah, totally.
Star Trek. Yeah. 13th of May, 1966, to borrow from Marvel Comics again, enough said, the first treatment of The City on the Edge of Forever was presented. And as I'm sure we all know, if the first treatment of City on the Edge of Forever was presented in 1966, that means Harlan Ellison was probably sharpening his pencils and contacted his lawyers because the guy was litigious and he hated what they did, which is arguably still the most popular episode in the entire franchise, based on a story. I don't know if you've read the original treatment that Harlan Ellison had for this. Oh my gosh, it's wild.
Mm-hmm.
It's got like drug abuse on the Enterprise. It's got space pirates. It's got all kinds of stuff. It would never have passed the muster.
Right.
All right, let's jump forward a couple of decades. 14th of May, Charles, I know you got this one marked down. 14th of May, 2001 was the premiere Broken Bow.
Can't win them all, Star Trek.
And for those who don't know, of course, that's the premiere of the show that was originally called Enterprise. And then because the network lost its courage, was later called Star Trek Enterprise.
Right.
Broken Bow was a weird original episode. I love the series, as does Alan, but I will say that was a kind of weird one. And I'm sure you guys know the original plan that Berman and Braga presented to the network, and they were burnt out when they did the show. They literally wanted the entire first season, or at least the first half of the entire first season, to take place on Earth. The show would have been building the NX-01, putting the crew together, kind of showing a right stuff kind of thing. And then somewhere in that first season, like halfway through at the end of the season, then the Enterprise would take off to space. And of course, the network said, you have got to be out of your beloved minds. So that never happened.
I agree with the network.
Yeah, I would have loved it, but I can see a lot of people would not have liked that. And then the last one, we're talking Star Trek, and now as we're winding down this most current crop of Star Trek shows, it's interesting to go back to the 16th of May, 2013, was the premiere in the United States of Star Trek Into Darkness, the second of the Kelvinverse / Abramsverse movies. I've said this before, ironically, the most disliked, even hated by the people who like the Kelvin universe. I don't hate it. As someone who doesn't love the Kelvin universe, I think it's fine. Once I knew that Benedict Cumberbatch was playing Khan, I kind of let go of any disappointments I was going to have going into the to that movie, so it's fine.
Yeah, I like the first half, and then it fell apart.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, transporting from Earth to Volk to to Kronos was a little much in that, but hey, it made some money, and that's this weekend Trek history.
Awesome. Well, before we get started, I mean, Veronica, you won't be able to join us the whole time.
No.
You've got something you're working on for this weekend.
Yes.
But you watched The Day the Earth Stood Still for the first time.
Yes.
Really?
Ooh, that's exciting. And they're
Yeah.
frozen.
Uh-oh.
So we will have to wait for them to unfreeze to get Veronica's initial response to The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Yeah, because I wonder, there's so many things that you watch where even if you've never seen it before, you know about it. So I'm wondering, Veronica, was this possibly a surprise to you, even though you'd never seen the movie?
I'd never, I didn't know anything about it whatsoever.
That's
Really?
amazing.
Nothing at all whatsoever.
Awesome.
I was having a very hard time paying attention
Mhm.
during it.
Yeah, it's a slow paced
Chuck
movie.
threatened to divorce me. He's like, if I had known this before we got married, done.
Wow.
But I mean, I was enjoyable. I just didn't grip my attention until maybe halfway through. The beginning, I couldn't pay attention. I don't know why.
Well, it's a slow paced movie. There's no doubt
Yeah.
about that.
It's one of the great movies of all time, though.
Yeah.
I mean, only an idiot. I'm just kidding.
Whoa. Ooh,
I love this
hot up
movie.
in here already.
I've loved this movie since I was a kid. What
God,
about
me
you
too.
guys?
Yes.
Same. Like, I don't even remember when I first saw it. It's always been there.
Mm-hmm.
I got into these kind of, older, classic sci-fi movies when I was little.
Mhm.
And, and that time, this was already, 30 years old-ish. No, not 30 years old. What the hell am I talking about? It came out in 51.
Mhm.
So it would be 20-ish. So, I mean, it was, even then, the way that movies were made, the way, that things were filmed, the way, the styles of acting and all that kind of stuff had already changed a great deal by the time I had first seen it. Just think of what somebody now like Veronica would see it for the first time. And I can kind of understand her not being able to, hold her attention, but I find it riveting, and partly because it takes me right back to being 7 years old and sitting on the couch in the dark late at night and just being, wrapped up in it.
Right. What's you, Keith?
Yes, I agree with Alan. One of the comments I was going to make is I watch at least 2 or 3 silent films a week. And I watch so many movies where the effects, and like Alan said, the very style of acting has changed. If you look at the movies from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, they used to be melodramatic. Then they became naturalistic and stuff.
Yeah.
So I agree with Alan. Like I can see someone like Veronica would look at this and say, it's a little slow and stuff. But I watch the movie and I can watch an old movie and appreciate it for what it is and what it represents. Even if there's no way you can see Gordon as anything but a man in a suit. There's just no way. But that doesn't take me out of the movie. Just like I see a lot of younger people talk about Star Trek and they're always babbling about the paper mache rocks and the poodle with the straws in its head. I see that stuff, but it doesn't take me out of it, because what the message is, like Alan says, it's holding my attention. And so for me, even though, yes, it's slow, in some ways it feels like it's an extended Twilight Zone episode. But it holds my attention because of what it is saying. And again, I can look at this and remember that in 1951, a science fiction movie like this kind of sci-fi was relatively new. These kind of message sci-fi that's not just about monsters, or not just about, other things that were coming, monsters from outer space. This is one of the early message movies that in sci-fi that was all about message. Later on, of course, you have things like Outer Limits and Twilight Zone, and then of course Star Trek. But this is very important at a time when people were talking about BIMs, bug-eyed monsters, and ray guns. A very important movie. And then the pedigree of the director, Robert Wise, and the star, Michael Rennie, who I first came across as the keeper on Lost in Space, on the 2-part Lost in Space. Yeah, just great. And Patricia Neal, wow.
Yeah.
What a cast.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, I grew up. Yeah, I've been watching old movies my whole life. And growing up, I spent a lot of time at my grandmother's house, and my uncle
Uh-huh.
had his entire VHS collection in her basement. It was like a Blockbuster video down there. No, I was just gonna say movies and
Okay.
television grew out of the theater, and
Yeah.
the farther back you go, the closer that is to theater.
Mhm. Alan made a good point about how the style of movies was changing around that time or even later by the time you watched it. But one thing I like that Robert Wise did that I lament we're losing so much of in America is I like the way he kind of held the camera. And I like the way those movies back then just kind of would focus in on people's faces. And like when the crowd was gathered there, I love the way he just kind of, and you see the same kind of cinematography and stuff like Star Trek, and I keep saying that, Twilight Zone. I love the way the camera would just show people in the crowd. There was like these two black women in the crowd who might have been mothers of maids. And then later on, when the scientists gathered, I was very impressed with what was literally a rainbow coalition of scientists. There was people from India. There was a couple of black ministers. There was Chinese people. And I love the way he kind of holds the camera, because sometimes just looking at people's faces is what gets me. And it's not a trick scene, but it's a great scene. I love it when Klaatu goes into the boarding house and everybody's freaking out, listening to the radio, and he shows up in shadow. Man, that's not like a Twilight Zone kind of move. I love that scene. Great photography.
Yeah. I love that scene too, because it's that whole sort of like, what's that whole Cold War, like paranoia, you know, all that stuff about how there's always somebody around the corner that's just waiting. And it could be somebody, you know, it could be somebody that looks just like you, but they're waiting. And they're listening to that news report about the spaceship. And then all of a sudden this man walks in, and everybody, I mean, people walk into that boarding house all the time, but that moment, it's like a startling moment for them. And just because they're in that mindset, and oh man, I love it.
It reminds me of the, of course I wasn't around, but it reminds me of the Orson Welles famous radio play, The War of the Worlds, which also had people in that case tied to their radios, and people just freaked out over like every little thing they heard. Thought that was great. And Aunt B was there freaking out too.
Yeah. For a very short bit. Yeah.
The diversity of the crowd scenes jumped out at me this time as well. Not in the main characters. The main characters, of course, are all white folks. But in the crowd scenes, you do get a lot of that. But also something else jumped out at me was just the portrayal of mass media.
Speaking of technology, I will say that it doesn't matter what like cameras look like or radio microphones look like, telephones, none of that stuff. It doesn't matter what, you know, it doesn't like take me out or anything. The one thing that always makes me think, holy cow, this really is an old movie, are the cars. And more specifically, ambulances and police cars. I don't know what it is, but if I see a really, really old, like a Model T, but it's a police car, then it's like, holy cow, that is so old. But it doesn't bother me if it's a telephone or anything like that. It's so crazy.
What really looks old from back in the day are trucks, like pickup trucks back in the day look really weird too. Charles, you were talking about the media. We lost you for a second.
Yeah, just the way that the mass media plays a role in the story. And I mean, this is a very early version of it, but it's very applicable to the way it works today.
Yeah, one of the things that struck me to what you're saying is how the media can help shape the mood, because you know, those are old enough to remember Walter Cronkite, and of course I wasn't around, but Edward R. Murrow was someone who was a voice of calm and information for people. And I noticed that a couple of the guys who were doing the news kept saying they were stressing not to panic. They were stressing that we didn't know if he was nefarious yet or not. And I was thinking about that in contrast with how would that play now, although you would obviously have this, I guess, the standard news people. But I wondered now, the paradigm shift of social media, how would that play out? You know, would you have time to, in certain quarters, would you be given time to let people analyze? Because they're kind of chill, honestly, if you think about it. I mean, yeah, you had the dude who shot the gift to the president, but then they put him in the hospital. They got like one guard outside the door. Everybody's chilling. Nobody's running. They're really chilling. And somehow they don't even have a real picture of him. They're like, well, the spaceman disappeared. We don't really know what he looks like.
Yeah.
And I was thinking in modern social media, you would have the responsible press who would say, you know, hold on, we're trying to figure it out. and you would have all the other press, the Loch Ness Monster, etc., social media wanting to get likes, who would be all over that mess. And I don't know if he could hide out in the hospital in modern times like he did in this movie.
Yeah,
Right.
today you'd have at least one news organization that was like, "There's no flying saucer."
Yeah.
Oh yeah, regardless of how many people had seen it and what evidence there was.
Right.
Absolutely.
And honestly, TMZ might get the scoop on his face or get an interview with him. Something like that.
Right. I would like to go back and see a period piece done like in the early 1950s or something like that, where it's somebody with like the modern influencer mentality.
Mm-hmm.
How would they go about that
Yeah.
at that time? You know, because nobody thought on those levels, because any kind of media reach or anything like that was very hyper local.
Yeah.
And there wasn't as much national coverage. There was certainly national coverage, but
Mhm.
not in the same way that anything, even up through the 60s, you know,
Right.
much
Right.
less anything that we have now. So
Yeah.
it'd be an interesting, you know, like drop an influencer back in time, you know, and just see how they cope.
Well,
Because then they might have to get a real job.
Well, I agree with you completely, because I think one of the things that goes on now with social media is anybody can get a camera on a phone and an internet connection. They call themselves a journalist or a reporter. And it's more than that. And like you're saying, Alan, back then, there was a very small number of people who you trusted. You know, there were the reporters out in the field who would call in wire reports to AP or something like that. You had, in 1950, it'd still be radio, so you don't have a few voices you really trusted. Now you could have literally 100 people reporting from the scene with their phones. And
Yeah.
I can only imagine what would happen in a situation like that.
Okay, now we're getting off into a tangent that I'm like got this thought in my head, and if I say we're gonna go down a rabbit hole. So I need to not say it.
I say you can say it. We can hold it. We can limit ourselves. Go for it.
No, I'm not going to. It's very political. I'm not going to do it. Okay. So instead, how about I do my job and get some comments? Let's try that.
All right. All right. Cool.
We start off with Matt Sweatman, who says, "Ready to discuss." I love Keanu Reeves in this movie.
Oh, Matt,
in
our group, I sent, when Charles sent this, I said, hey, you mean this one, not this one, right? And I sent a picture of Keanu Reeves from a movie I honestly haven't seen.
Oh yeah, I saw it in the theater, and I should have watched it this week so I could do a compare and contrast with the original. I know it wouldn't hold up, but I don't remember very much about it. Like I can remember, even though I rewatched this movie this week, if I hadn't, I can remember details about this. Like literally the whole movie is in my head. Anyway, okay, comments. Our buddy Bill says, must do a comic 5-minute Day the Earth Stood Still. The sergeant realizes my 45 isn't going to make a difference, but we did bring coffee. I'm going to pour it a couple of cups.
Well, for as good as their weapons did, might as well just drink coffee.
And for Elaine, this is her first time watching it also.
Wow.
Oh, Elaine,
that's really cool.
Yes. Tell us your thoughts, Elaine.
Well, there's a lot of comments, so she probably has already.
Awesome.
We just got to get to them.
Awesome.
Let's see. Matt says, I enjoyed it, but I've always enjoyed old sci-fi and horror. But I did have to wonder if parents in the 50s routinely let their 8-year-olds hang out with complete that is something that stood out to me this time.
Matt, stay tuned. Yes.
That did not, it may have been 20 years since I've watched this movie. But that this weird guy who they're initially all afraid of walks in the door and he's like, oh, I can watch Bobby. And they're like, sure, why not?
She was hesitant, but the date was like, sure, this guy could take him.
The date wanted to have his date. That's all. He didn't care.
Yeah,
to me, out later that he has a very different agenda than everybody else.
Right? Yeah, to me, if I was a mother, that would be a warning sign that my boyfriend, near fiance, wants to get rid of my kids. So quit. You're right. You're right. And I was going to say this later, Matt, but I'll go ahead and say this here too. Later on, they're like, oh, hey, this stranger who has like evidently valuable diamonds in his pocket. And she's like, it's okay. I got a lock on my door. Bobby can sleep with me tonight. He's like, all right, bye. See you later. Wow.
Yeah,
I don't
crazy.
think we were ever that naive in this country, I hope.
I hope not. All right. Elaine says, I even saw an actor in it that was also in an episode of The
Wow.
Monkees.
That I didn't expect to hear.
Well, we should take that opportunity to say, everybody check out Monkeying Around, which goes live every Wednesday night at 8 p.m., hosted by Chuck, Veronica, and Elaine.
That's right.
For more in Monkeys content. Okay, so she also says, I was fascinated to learn about Patricia Neal. My mini deep dive was spurred on by seeing her own biopic on her IMDb. Both she and Michael Rennie have an extraordinarily huge amount of credits. The only real place that I know her from is she was in that TV movie of the Waltons that launched the series later on. She did not continue on into the series, and Michael Learned played Olivia, but in the original film it was Patricia Neal, and she's wonderful in it, and she was nominated for an Emmy, I believe. Nominated or won, I don't remember, but yeah, she's very cool.
She was. Patricia Neal was in really poor health, which is why she didn't think she could stand the rigors of a network TV show. And I will tell you, as every single time I see or listen to Patricia Neal, I am always hearing Kate Mulgrew, because if that lady doesn't sound like Patricia Neal to me, it is so amazing. She has the same timbre and tone of voice. So I'm always thinking Kate Mulgrew.
Yeah, so we were going to see if we could find some Trek connections in this film, and there's one.
There it is. Yeah.
Early prototype of Captain Janeway.
Yes.
Well, Robert Wise is a pretty strong connection as well.
Well, yeah. I was going to say, I doubt that Captain Janeway would let her salamander babies just go off with some strange guy that just walked in the house 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, she just leave him on the planet.
Exactly.
A bad dude.
All right. Elaine says, I was super impressed with the special effects of the spaceship, how it opened and closed. Agreed. That's something that I've always loved about this film. And
Elaine,
Gort is an awesome robot.
Yes. Elaine, if you watch or read anything about the making of, they spent a lot of time putting that spaceship prop together. One of the things was, if you notice, there was a scene where remember the soldier said he couldn't even see a seam anymore where the ramp came out. They took a lot of great care to try to make the prop look like that. They spent a lot of time trying to hide that seam. And yes, the effects are primitive by our time, but I don't know if you did this on purpose, Charles. I just realized this is 75-year anniversary of this movie. 75 years ago. Holy crap. Yeah, they did a great job.
Let's see. Matt says, a credit to the film. I was shaking my head when Klaatu arranged the EMT and joked what it would be far from deathless. But then they explained that hospitals and planes were exempt. Okay, yeah, that's jumping ahead. We're going to talk about that. Let's see. Matt says they actually put some thought into the plot and explained the obvious flaw.
Yeah.
Elaine says, I'm trying to keep the comments going like they were last night. Oh, and on their monkeying around show. Bill says the sergeant. Oh, we're continuing on with the thing. The sergeant asks, does that thing make any sudden moves? Yes. Does that matter? Sergeant. Yes, it matters a lot. What's it for? It's a medical device. Okay. We're not going to read the entire plot of that. Elaine says Patricia Neal recovered from several strokes while pregnant with her last child, and she was married to Roald Dahl. I never knew that.
Yep, that's
holy cow. That's really cool.
Indeed, yeah.
Dadgum. Okay, and Matt says in the episode Catwalk, Tripp assigned this as the the choice for movie.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. All right, Chuck, what you got to say now?
I was going to say that when this movie came out, my grandmother was pregnant with my dad. Like, he was born in 1951.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. 75 years ago.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. I think one thing that it really does and again, I wish more people would watch movies like this, because I've heard this so many times now. They say that modern audiences can't watch movies like this that are too slow and blah blah blah. I think it's like anything else. If you get exposed to it, you can appreciate it. Because I love the way he built it up. I love the way the saucer lands, and in a modern version of this, there'll probably be explosions and stuff straight off. I thought it was very realistic when that one soldier panicked and shot when he. Now, it is weird that the gift to the president looked like spikes or something came out, but the soldier panicked and shot him. And they're pretty darn lucky that Gort didn't go off right then and there. We'll talk later about that whole decision to put yourself under a bunch of freaking robots, but we just lost Charles. He's probably going to come back in.
Yeah.
I thought that was really good, the way they kind of built the suspense up with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I think that a lot of the robot scenes are so effective because most of it is just a prop.
Yeah.
Still standing. It doesn't move, and you don't know what it's about. You don't know what it's up to. You don't know. And that moment, the first time that it starts to like move its head and take a step, it's like the most ominous thing there is, because it has done nothing up to that point except stand there.
Absolutely.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. That one was really, that was, yeah. He's kind of unnerving. Gort is.
Yeah. And partly just because he's so big.
Yeah.
The actor was 7.5 feet tall. Yeah, I know.
Wow.
Right. And that's, without the boots and the extra helmet and everything. So Gort had to be close to 8 feet. That's amazing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And he had to do, I love the acting. He had to do the thing where you don't move the arms, and he had to kind of, take the steps up. Some of that was probably the costume, I'm sure.
Sure.
But I like that. I like that as well.
Okay. So Keith, since it's you and I, not that I would, hey, look, Charles is here. He says,
hey, Chuck.
I decided to join in the comments. I was very impressed by the visual effects in this movie. I thought they held up very well for a 75-year-old movie. I totally agree.
Yeah.
I think this movie looks phenomenal. And that scene where they have encased Gort in the whatever the hell it is, the unbreakable plastic or whatever it is. I don't even know. And he just stands there because he ain't bothered by it. He don't care. He ain't got nothing to do. He's just going to stand there until something happens and he gets activated, and then he just like melts that thing from the top down. I was like, man, that is the coolest thing.
In one way, Gort kind of reminds me of the Borg in Star Trek as they were originally presented, because remember, it was weird to me. Gort was, like you're saying, Gort was standing there, and they were evidently taking blowtorches and diamond drills to the ship, and Gort was just completely unconcerned. Yeah, and it reminds me of how the Borg in Star Trek, when they were first they went on the ship and they said, basically, until you become a threat, they just literally don't pay attention to you.
Exactly.
But when he moves, he moves.
Yeah. Let's see. Bill says, I wish Gort could make all humanity stand there and, oh, hang on, I lost it. And honestly work through the first 5 steps of AA.
Oh, my. Cute. What a taskmaster that would be.
And then for the rest of the steps, humanity has to move its ass. All right.
Yeah, you joke. We're going to get to that later.
Elaine says, I already said that Gort was great, but in my head, I was comparing him to the robot from the Doctor Who story, Robot. But that's not a very high bar to start with. Hey, now, there's nothing wrong with that robot.
Don't know that one.
Oh, it's Tom Baker's first story. And it's a very cool robot played by a person who's very, very tall. And then the costume is even taller outside of that.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. Charles says, we should shout out Billy Gray, who played Bobby. He was a fantastic child actor, which you don't always get. That's a good point. I did really enjoy him in this film. I thought he was just did a fantastic little performance and was incredibly believable. And he kind of becomes the audience, the identifiable character for the audience. He's kind of like the audience representative in the film. And I loved him. He was great. Elaine
It's funny
says,
y'all say that because I put it. Yeah, I was going to say real quickly, it's funny you say that because I put that in my notes as well, because when he saw Klaatu go back to the ship, I'm always looking at people's eyes. His facial expressions and stuff look very genuine. And I thought I was very impressed with his acting ability.
Just so you know, you're lagging now too. It's going to end up with just me on this screen. All right. Let's see. Apparently that kid was in Father Knows Best. That's interesting. So what I was going to say a minute ago is I want to talk about the religious allegory of this film. That Klaatu is basically a metaphor for Christ. He comes to earth with a message. The message is misunderstood, and he is basically, they try to put him to death. He, at the end of the film, he is essentially killed, and he is resurrected by his robot friend, and he takes on the name Carpenter. And I find that to be very interesting. Now, that is something that completely went over my head when I was a kid watching this film. For me, it was just a strange guy who I had seen on Lost in Space, who, you know, is an alien and comes to Earth. And, you know, I found it to be a very interesting parallel that I wasn't aware of early on in my life.
It's funny. I hadn't even thought about the Carpenter name and stuff, because what you're saying now, it absolutely makes sense. I did notice that when Patricia Neal asked him, did his people basically have the power of life and death? He did say, no, that is only for the Almighty Spirit, or the Almighty.
Yes.
So he basically said God, which I thought was very interesting.
Yes. Right. I think that is interesting, because Almighty Spirit is definitely, I mean, it's kind of like a more generic term, like it's a universal term, if you will.
Right.
Like you guys can call him God, but out here in the universal community, we say this.
Yeah.
And I found that to be really interesting. And I read today that was not in the original script.
Thank you. I was going to ask that question.
There you go.
You answered my question.
The studio was a bit iffy about the whole like religious overtone thing. And then you get to the resurrection part and you're like, a robot has a power of life and death. And so they made the resurrection a temporary one, and they put that line in, ascribing the only, you know, being to have that power is basically God.
Very interesting. So so the studio, so that was put in did the studio want that line about God, or you're saying
they just wanted something in the script writer added that line, but it was it was because of the studio's reticence about.
Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying, because that I was thinking that's a really, really, really loaded statement when he said basically only God can do that. Because let's be honest, science fiction we will watch now, they'd be like, oh yeah, we can bring you back to life, no big deal. They wouldn't be worried about that seeming almost sacrilegious. But you're right, they kind of handled it to say, no. No matter how advanced anybody gets, only God has the true power of life and death. You wouldn't be worried about that in science fiction nowadays. I thought that was very interesting.
And the other thing that I find interesting about this is that other science fiction properties that you see in the 50s and the 60s kind of go that same route. Like we see mentions of God in Star Trek. You know, we get that here and there in Lost in Space.
Yeah.
And it's not unusual. It's not out of place at all, particularly in the era of like, you know, creationism versus, you know, any of that stuff.
Right.
You're going to have the science fiction show not wanting to be anti-God or anti-religious or anti-faith. So they sneak some things like that in.
Yeah.
Let me get a couple of comments here. Elaine says, heck, that went over my head as an adult, but I can see it. Charles says, Jesus of science. Let's see. Bill says, Alan, thanks. I never realized until now the significance of the name Carpenter.
I didn't either. And I've seen this movie. I just watched this last year. I didn't know that.
And you know what, Keith, I think for us, it's kind of a hurdle for us to jump because we have seen it so many times and from such an early age that like I said, when I watch it, I still watch it with those 7-year-old eyes. You know what I mean?
Same here.
And then Charles says that does explain a lot. Klaatu having faith seems at odds with the rest of the movie. Yeah. And then we wrap it up with Matt saying, I also had to laugh at the movie poster. I don't remember Gort holding a scantily clad woman.
Oh, yeah.
You gotta get those people in the theater somehow.
Yeah. The movie. Hey, should we take a break now? Are we up to take a break? Or
I was actually just about to suggest that very thing. So let's do that. You know, I didn't plan this, but since that ad does include a little clip from a Doctor Who episode from 1964 with that really wobbly spaceship flying across that looks like a pie tin, you know?
Yes.
This movie, 1951, was 13 years earlier, and the spaceship effects, particularly of the landing, are really convincing.
They're very good. Notice that the ship glows when it takes off and lands. And if you listen really closely, I hear very slight vestiges of the Jupiter 2 engine sounds from Lost in Space. Not exactly, but very slight. I heard that. And if you remember in the original Lost in Space, the Jupiter 2 glowed when it took off.
That's right. Absolutely.
Love it.
And apparently, I haven't heard it, but when I was reading up on it today, apparently when they did the pilot for Lost in Space, the 90-minute pilot that was basically concepts for 3 different episodes that they pitched to the network included score from this movie.
Oh, I could see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I could see that. Oh, now you're taking me down another path. If we're going to talk, you got to talk about the music. It was Bernard Herrmann, who was considered one of the greatest movie conductors of all time, who did the score. And of course, the theremin, how you pronounce it?
Theremin, yeah.
The theremin, that sound that became synonymous with science fiction and some horror back in the day. Star Trek used it. I remember it being used. I'm not Star Trek, excuse me. Lost in Space, keep going. Lost in Space used it. As a matter of fact, I think they used it on the episode with the Keeper. I remember that
probably
weird.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember growing up with that weird sound. The music works, especially. Also, what works is when they play the music. Alan, you made a very good point I hadn't thought about. Gort is just standing there, which is unnerving. And then when he moves, I wrote down Gort almost taps into almost like a primal fear of the Cyclops from Greek mythology, because when that visor comes up, there's that one eye, and then the way it pulses. And where else have I seen an effect like that? The Martian spaceships in the War of the Worlds movie from the 1950s. They had with the one gooseneck eye. The Cylons in Battlestar Galactica with that one eye that goes back and forth. And in Marvel Comics, there's a character called the Destroyer. It's this armor created by Odin that has this ultimate disintegrator beam that is released when it opens up a visor. So when Gort's eye starts pulsing, it's creepy, especially when Patricia Neal falls down. My wife is watching. Oh God, she had to fall down. When she starts screaming Klaatu, Barada, and Nikto, because by then Gort had already killed 2 people. Gort's like, I'm not just gonna get rid of guns. I'm killing now. So it's really good.
I'm tired of y'all people's BS.
Yes.
It also, speaking of Marvel Comics, he also reminds me a tiny tad of, I don't know if you were familiar with ROM, Space Knight.
Yes, that's right. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Fighting the dire wraiths. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I remember ROM.
God, you just said something that was spurred a thought in me, and I don't remember what it is. So I do want to. Yeah, who knows? Who knows? But I do want to. I'm glad you brought up the score, because that was something I was planning on talking about, because that score is really interesting.
Yes.
It uses kind of an unusual instrumentation, and it uses like groups of instruments in unusual ways.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of really standout moments is the robot theme has timpani going through it, but it's really, really low. It's really quiet timpani. So it just kind of gives you this, like this undercurrent of like this rumble, you know?
Is that what
And
the
it's
timpani
kind of,
means? Rumble?
yeah.
Okay.
Huh?
Timpani means rumble?
No, timpani is like a kettle drum.
Okay. Okay. I know what you're talking about. I know the sounds.
Yeah.
I don't know the names for them. So I know what you're talking about because I wrote that down too. It was very effective.
But they do an interesting thing with it, because timpani are tunable drums, and it's done with a pedal, so you can change it and like assign a different pitch to it within a certain range for each size drum. But they do a thing where it changes pitches while it's being played, rather than to like doing like how do I say it, like defined pitches. It's like he does a roll, but then he changes the pitch, and it sounds so cool.
It really does. That there, along with the special effects, the musical score told me I was watching a movie where people put time into it. They weren't just slapping together, a standard sci-fi movie at the time. Score I could hear. It was when I saw the name Bernard Herrmann come up, I looked him up. I knew that name, but I was like, where do I know him? Like, oh, from everything. This was not a low budget, low effort movie at all.
I know what it was that I was going to say from what you were talking about. You were talking about the theremin, and it became so synonymous with sci-fi and particularly outer space kind of stuff.
Yes.
One of the first, it was invented in 1931, I think is the year that was, the patent was filed. Okay. So it had been around for a while. One of the very first uses of the theremin in an orchestral score for a film was by Dmitri Shostakovich, and it was in a film about a lady who was lost in a snowstorm. So that weird kind of sound was like depicting the cold and the wind and the storm, and no association at all with outer space. And it's so interesting that it became sort of like that standard sound for alienness,
Absolutely. Yeah. It like you said, as soon as I hear it, I feel a certain way. And it was just a part of my childhood. Cause I've been watching science fiction and horror and space movies since I was, 5 or 6 years old. And every time I hear it, it conveys a certain feeling to me.
Okay. Here's an interesting comment from Matt Sweatman. Also, Elaine and I are doing our Thursday night charcuterie tradition, and we have some of your friend pickle and ranch dip that we brought home left.
Okay.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, I don't know that one. It's not mine.
The pickle and the pickle and ranch dip. Oh yeah. I brought some of that to the Atlanta Gallifreyans meeting this past Saturday.
Oh, okay. It must be good.
All about that. It was so good. It was ranch, but it's got like dill pickle in it. Oh my God, it's so good. All right. Charles says, I thought it was an interesting choice having Captain Pike watching The Day the Earth Stood Still in the opening scenes of Strange New Worlds. And then he found himself in a similar situation to Klaatu in that first adventure. Earth is now on the other side of the story. That is very, very good. I'm glad you pointed that out. That is some excellent observation, Chucky.
Yeah, because I think what you were saying from the start is that, the word's tossed out a lot, but this is an iconic movie because of the whole theme of, again, you go back to the 40s and stuff, you had a lot of monster movies, but around the 50s, there was the whole thing about, we had the atom bomb. And I think, by 1951, we also had the H bomb. And I think Russia had the H bomb by then. And we had just come out of World War II. And so, so the movies the movies in the 40s were more like monsters. And you see a lot of aliens come from outer space and stuff like that. And then the movies became much more pointed, much more of a message. And this is a message that doesn't go away, because we got to talk about Star Trek in comparison to this, because they literally said, cool it or this still blows my mind away. They literally said, cool it, bring that crap out into the universe, and we're going to destroy your entire planet. But what's scary is they said, we've done it to ourselves, and evidently the robots can't be turned off anymore. What the heck? I mean, wow.
Yeah.
I don't think I want to live under such a society.
I would really like to see more about where Klaatu comes from, and sort of the planetary neighborhood that his planet belongs to. I'm really curious about that. I mean, I like not knowing. I think the movie is stronger because you don't know, because they don't go into detail about that, but I'm still curious about it.
Yeah.
Matt adds another single-eyed robot to our list, and that is Kit from Knight Rider.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. The one-eye thing is it's kind of a theme. It's kind of a theme. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you, Alan, but I want to know where he came from, because, and this is very common back in the 50s and 60s. They didn't quite have the science down to how far they were. He said, I've traveled 250 million miles. Well, that's in the solar system. So I took that in my head as he just meant he was probably parked there, because he did say they've been listening to our radio signals and stuff like that. I found it interesting and kind of charming and kind of quaint that they knew certain things about Earth, but they didn't know other things. Like he was like, "Hey, if I give you these diamonds, will you give me $2?" Like, hell yeah!
I know, right?
This good?
That's the deal of the century, man.
Yeah, it's kind of like Kirk in the 4 Star Trek movie when they were talking about the money, and he was like, "Is that good, or is that a lot, or something like that?" So I thought that was kind of interesting. But he knew it. Also, Michael Rennie is one of those actors who just can't help but have character or presence. And what I thought he did, he walked a really cool line between, he would be kind of humorous. He was laughing at Bobby and kind of smiling, and he was shaking his head, kind of laughing at the professor's formulas on the chalkboard. And then he could real quickly get a side that's almost chilling. Like, remember, he would say stuff like, "We have no interest in the petty affairs of your planet." And just a second before, he had this kind of charming smile. And then that other side of him comes out. So he does come off as an alien in a very effective way.
But you know what? That also reminds me of another scene where Bobby is showing him around town for the first time, and they go to Arlington and they go to the Lincoln Memorial, and he reads that inscription, and he's like, and he's so impressed by Lincoln's words.
Right.
I love that scene.
I do too.
Let's see. Elaine says, about me not understanding her last comment, blame the grammar on the Snoop red wine that we're drinking. You better be careful with that, because if it comes from Snoop, it might be laced with who knows what. And then Chuck says, don't tell Mom. She doesn't like for me to steal from people.
Oh, that was great.
I love that line.
That was great.
Klaatu reminds me a lot of Spock. Agreed.
Yeah, he really pulls that off. Speaking of Spock, real quick, I do want to talk about the Star Trek thing, because again, Star Trek in a lot of ways becomes the epitome of the message-driven science fiction of the era, of that generation. One thing I wrote is that no way in hell would Gene Roddenberry write a world. This is not a criticism, it's a fact. Gene Roddenberry would have written a world where we, as in humans, would do the solution that those people did, because Gene Roddenberry was all about free choice and free will, and his relentless belief that we would get better. And if you think about it, Star Trek was always about, like, they were afraid of M5, they were afraid of Nomad. Kirk was all, and Star Trek is always about, we don't want to put our fate in the hands of computers. And Roddenberry is really huge on humans becoming better and building our own future. I could imagine Gene Roddenberry would completely go, there's no way I'm going to build a future in which humans have basically enslaved themselves to robots that they can't turn off because we can't act right. But do you think that would be realistic in any society out there where that might happen, where people basically built themselves a gilded cage and they're okay with it?
Well, I don't know. Okay with it. That's a different... I mean, maybe they weren't okay with it for a while and just learned how to accept it and learned how to function within it. I don't know, but it's an interesting thing. Matt says, most 50s sci-fi was fun, but very alien invasion and monster based.
Right.
This stands out for being thoughtful, and the aliens were not necessarily evil.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And Elaine says, after watching the movie, I have seen Klaatu Barada Nikto everywhere. Oh, it gets used so often.
All the
Those
time.
3 words are used heavily in the Star Wars universe, as we've seen in our rewatch of The Mandalorian. Yeah, you see it everywhere. Yeah.
You do. When I was working for ADP, when I was in IT at ADP, and we would get a lot of documentation on how to do installations and upgrades from the main IT guy, the home office in Jersey. And I was doing a weekend long database upgrade one time. It's like, it took hours. Long story short, for you to start the database upgrade, you had to type in a password. And when I looked at the documentation, the password was Barada Nikto. And then the guy wrote in parentheses, it's something from a little scene science fiction movie. I think he was joking around. Right. But when I was reading that with some of my fellows, they're like, what the heck is he talking about? What is Klaatu? So, but yeah, that even showed up as a password.
That's so funny. Okay, so we're getting down to the last few minutes. Wow. So you want to share any overall view of this film and maybe your history with it?
Yeah, like you said, I don't even remember when I first saw this movie, because back when I was growing up, you just watched it. It was on this. It's why I've seen like the Brady Bunch 10 billion times. It was on TV, you watched it. And I've seen this movie so many times, I don't remember when I first saw it. It's always been part of it. I love the message. And as Matt was just commenting on as well, if you look at what went on during those times, you had the monster movies, then you had the aliens from outer space, then you had the whole period of radiation, like bombs, which was message, Godzilla and them. It was like, okay, humans, watch it, we're going to irradiate ourselves. Later on, when you get into the 60s and the 70s, the message was, watch out for war, whether we're going to kill ourselves with bacteriological, germ warfare, nuclear war. And then in the 70s, it was, we might destroy the environment through pollution and overuse of resources. And so I think this is a show, this movie is on that journey of all the different ways sci-fi started being used to tell us different messages about what we better watch out for. I love that.
So what you're saying, Keith, is that it's woke.
I know, right? Yeah, 75 years old, right? Yes, it is.
Oh my gosh.
And you know, I've never been on a movie set, but I know nothing is accidental in the movie. I absolutely noticed the people of color in the movie, even for a moment, because they showed up. And the scientists at the end, my goodness, that was great. I love that.
And you know, I mean, as you say, I mean, they would not have picked those people to be in that crowd scene, and certainly not to be up front and in camera focus, unless it was intentional. That was no accident. And and I was very impressed by that. And I just didn't think about that when I was a kid, you know?
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
One last thing I will say too, we were talking about the pedigree of this movie from Bernard Herrmann, who you knew of, and then of course Robert Wise, Patricia Neal, Michael Rennie, the guy who played her boyfriend, Hugh Marlowe. Hugh Marlowe was also an incredibly, he worked a lot in Hollywood, in the classic Hollywood movies. He's a great actor. He also stars in my opinion, one of the best movies of all time, which is Bette Davis's All About Eve. So you're talking a great pedigree here of actors. They weren't just slapping this thing together. They put some work in, and it stands the test of time.
And you know, these people are not known for sci-fi movies, and part of that is because there just weren't that many in production. You know, you didn't build a career around sci-fi movies or anything like that, and certainly not on television. I wonder what their first impression of the script was when they were given a script.
Oh, I never thought about that. That's very good.
I never have either until just now. I just wonder what Patricia Neal, you know, who would later be Olivia Walton, you know, and who has done 8 million movies. I wonder what brought her to this film.
It's true. I watch TCM, Turner Classic Movies, every day, and I've seen Michael Rennie in a ton of old movies, but not science fiction until he later does Lost in Space. So, and you can tell they've always said, you know, we've always said that science fiction, you don't approach it, or science fiction, horror, fantasy, you don't approach it as the subject. You approach it as basically real life with those trappings. because again, they're just acting in a movie that happens to have these themes. And I think it can't work any other way, because we can definitely see all the other goofy science fiction movies from the time, like I Was a Teenage Werewolf and blah, blah, blah. And it goes on and on. Sure. You can tell.
Oh, yeah. This is definitely on a different level than a lot of the other things that were happening at the time.
Well, real quick before we go, Alan, what are your final thoughts? And you've seen it. It seems like you watched it as much as me. What did you get out of it this time, or did anything change for you?
Nothing really changed that much, other than I really paid more attention to the score this time. Yeah. Seeing it from a production point of view is, not something that I've really thought about before, like when I was younger and watching it. I just find it to be a very impressive movie. I find it, I can understand, somebody with modern eyes watching this and it being very, they feel very alienated by it, because it is very slow, but it's methodical. It builds a scenario. It builds the characters within that scenario. It takes time to tell a story. It's all about suspense and not knowing where this thing is going to be leading to. And I just find it like a masterpiece. I just think it's an amazing film.
I agree. And I'm real hesitant to talk about remaking movies. And I know this has been remade once already. So I don't know if I want to remake, but some of the things we talked about tonight, I do wonder how that scenario would play out in the real world today. For example, would people be as naturally terrified of an alien? Nowadays, a lot of people would greet him. A lot of people would instantly go, hallelujah, we're saved. Somebody from a more advanced society to help us fix our problems. With the aliens nowadays, would the story be written that they're only worried about our warlike ways, or would they be more concerned about our intolerance, like our intolerance for homosexuality and different races and ethnicities? But the bottom theme is what never changed, which is which is what Star Trek said. You humans are full of a lot of crap, and you got to get that stuff handled before you go out into the universe.
Another thought that I had not really ever thought of before, but you put it in my head when you were talking about Klaatu coming with the message that he brings to Earth. Just think, had Star Trek adopted that same thing, and our prime directive was not non-intervention, it was going to places and saying, hi, we're your neighbor and everything's cool and great, but if you bring your nonsense out into the galactic community, we're going to take care of you. We're going to put you in your place. Can you imagine how different Star Trek would be if that was the message? A
quarantine, like a universal quarantine of certain planets.
A universal, we're going to kick your ass if you bring your crap out to us.
It would definitely be different. But now that you say that, I'm thinking about beings like the Metrons and stuff. Even though they didn't seal off Earth, or the Organians, who kind of sort of took that same attitude, which is, if you don't behave, we're going to control you. They didn't stop our travel, but remember, the Organians forced us to sign a treaty with the Klingons for a while. And so, and the Metron's like, don't come back into our space until you've grown up a little bit. So, you're right. We see the other races do that.
That's kind of Q-like, right? That's kind of that whole thing with Q and the encounter at Farpoint.
Yeah, that's very true.
3 last comments, and then we're going to wrap this up. Oh, dang it. Now there's 4 last comments. Okay. Elaine says, 2 thumbs up from me.
Agreed.
Charles says, I think it holds up extremely well, both the visual effects and the social messaging. Unfortunately, the messages are still timely 75 years later.
Amen.
Correct. Elaine says, maybe it's because it's a sneaky protest against the McCarthy Red Scare. Yes.
Yeah.
And Elaine says, that's what Archer was inadvertently doing anyway. I don't know what that was in.
Was that maybe about the whole telling people they can't come out into space?
Oh, maybe so. Maybe so. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, Keithy,
wow.
People want to follow you elsewhere on the socials. Where might they do so?
You can find me on Facebook, primarily the ESO Network Facebook groups, and especially, of course, our Facebook group, Earth Station Trek.
Right on. And you can find me at cosmiccreative.com. And I've got my Doctor Who books and some other books there, books I've published by other authors, information about the documentary that I'm working on, and all kinds of other crazy stuff. And I will also say that you can find Chuck and Veronica both at Felt Nerdy for their puppet goings-ons, their family-friendly puppet stuff, and Felt Nerdy and Dirty for their more racy puppet stuff. And you can find them at Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
Yes.
All right. We will see y'all next week, next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be doing another one of these Beyond Trek shows, and we're going to be talking about which one? Not This Island Earth. We're talking about
Forbidden Planet.
Oh, Forbidden Planet. That's right.
Oh my God. Talk about a classic.
Oh, I cannot wait.
I know.
I can't wait.
Wow.
All right. So everybody, we'll see you then. Everybody take care. Have a great week and keep trekking on.
Thanks, everyone.